So, customer journey mapping is an absolute vital tool for organizations to really put themselves in the shoes of their customers to understand what their customers are experiencing. There are four key dimensions really that we can look at that should guide the customers or anyone really as to why we should look at customer journey mapping. So, we can look at personalization, trust, improved efficiencies, and then also, enhancing the speed and accuracy of how we conduct business with our customers and ultimately how that will improve the customer experience. Now, if we look at the personalization component specifically and we hone in on that, we ask ourselves, if we look at that dimension, how is this service or offering that we're delivering more personalized to the customer? What are we doing in that domain to ensure that the products and services that we're delivering to that customer truly is personal? So examples of this might be that, in our particular messaging to our customers, normally what we do is we go, "Dear customer," but it really allows you throughout the process to go, what, maybe I should change that messaging to go, "Good afternoon, John," as an example. The second component is in the trust realm, and in order for organizations to really have a trusted relationship with their customers, there's an understanding that the experience that the customer has with the brand really impacts their beliefs. So if they have a very bad experience with the organization, naturally, that trust dimension will be broken because they believe that the products or services might not be, relatively adequate. And then the second component is if they have a very good experience with the organization, that their experience might be, very good, and therefore their belief is that they could essentially trust you. So in order to really understand that trust dimension, you need to do the customer journey mapping to understand how we're going to resolve the customer's pain points to be able to deliver a consistent and reliable service for the customer. Then the third component is really the improved efficiency section. And if we look at improved efficiencies, there's this narrative around effort score that's exceptionally important. And then we also have the customer dimension. So from a customer's perspective, the time it takes to do repetitive components throughout the process will impact, the efficiency throughout their onboarding process, as an example, or maybe a collections process, as an example. So if you continuously have to repeat putting in your name or potentially your ID number, that takes a lot of time. Therefore, it has an impact on the effort score that a customer has to go through from that perspective. Then from an agent perspective, you might have that they have to toggle through multiple screens in order for them to essentially be able to service the customer. That will also have an impact on that effort score component. They might have to put the customer on hold, which will ultimately, delay a process being fulfilled. Therefore, when we look at the customer journey map, it's important to understand exactly, where those components are. And throughout the process, you're able to, go ahead and understand exactly where those components are. And the fourth dimension is really enhancing the speed and accuracy of the organizations. With the environment as we have it today, it's a very competitive environment. The competition is quite rife out there. So in order to make sure that you remain ahead of the competitors, you have to reduce competitive talks within the organization and then ultimately introduce new technologies that will help you become more accurate and deliver customer service at speed. So a customer journey map really is a visual representation of the organization's processes and systems, but also it allows you to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and go through the processes and experiences that they have with the organization. Now, there's really only 8 key steps that you can take to really create your, visual representation for your customers' experiences with your brand. So we look at the first component that is very important is no map can exist without you starting with an objective. So you can set an objective as an example, how do we enhance the customer onboarding process, So the first element that we need to understand is when we go through the processing journey is that you map the customer journey. Now, the first dimension is really to look at phases. So you'll find if you do some research in the market that there are, a few nuances and variations of these phases, but typically they consist of 5 dimensions, which, takes into account from how does the customer become aware of you, straight to how do we retain a customer and keep them, as a loyal customer throughout the process. The second component that you need to deep dive into is if you look at your systems and processes dimension. So we generally refer to this as the stages component, and maybe to use an example, as we look at our objectives to enhance the customer, onboarding process is how does a customer within the purchasing phase, as an example, what are the stages that they go through in order to, potentially procure a new service? Which leads us, to the third component, which is identifying those customer touchpoints. Now, this is a crucial component because it really goes into what communication channels is the customer using at each interval. So if we say that, throughout the purchasing phase, the customer, let's say, is wanting to buy or take out a new loan, as an example, we would say, what channel did they use? What documentation did they need to provide? What systems did they interact with? And we look at 2 components here. We look at the front stage, which is the tools that the customer is engaging with, and the backstage component, which is the systems, processes, and then also the people dimension that are interacting with those back-end systems to enable, customer service to fulfill, that purchasing journey. The fourth dimension that's, really crucial when you're looking at your customer journey map is to look at the voice of the customer. You can either look at, doing surveys or NPS ratings, or potentially post call, surveys. There are multiple ways, or quantitative or even qualitative information components that you could use to really understand, what are our customers experiencing within a specific phase, at a certain stage, through a specific channel when they're interacting with us. Which brings us to the fifth component, which is really identifying key points, for improvement, or areas of improvement. Now, those areas of improvement you have to do in each component of each phase and each stage to ensure that you're ultimately, improving on the objective that you set out to improve. Now, that can be that you're using new technologies, or you might be finding that, specific channel that the customer is using just isn't adequate for that particular outcome. Which leads us to the sixth dimension. And at this point in time, from step 1 to step 5, what we've really done is we've only looked at the as-is stage of your customer journey. It's only when we get to stage 6, or the 6th step, that we're really looking at, okay, how do we enhance this? What does the future state look like for our customer experience? How do we get to our objective, which in this example, obviously we use how do we enhance the customer onboarding process? So on the 6th step, what we do here is we start looking at personas. So we create the persona, we understand exactly what the outcome is, and we start testing that throughout the process. So we start again with step 1, which is we map that new persona throughout the phases, throughout the stages, understanding exactly where those touch points are, and then also making sure that we address the key pain points from that area. Which leads us to the 7th component, is Now that we understand exactly what we want to create and what this customer value proposition is, buy-in is absolutely critical within the organization. If you don't have the right buy-in, you'll find that, people might not adopt to these new processes and services, as we would like them to. So understanding exactly that you have the right message at the right time through the right channel, becomes an absolute critical component. And then the last, area when we look at the customer journey map is, now that we understand exactly, where we were, where we're going to, we need to start implementing and or delivering on that customer value proposition. Now, in order for you to deliver on that customer value proposition, you really have to understand, what are the people dimensions that are involved for change? What are the processes that will be impacted that we need to understand that will change? And then thirdly is the systems and technology component that ultimately will support the change.